Hi, you guys, my students of history. For the last time you and I got together, we had to talk about rights, natural rights, whether they actually exist, and if so, what is their source? Your responses on that topic were interesting and all over the ballpark. Some of you, like John Locke, said that these natural rights do exist and they are sourced from a God. Not all of you agreed. There were a lot of you that cited government, culture, society, human nature as the source of certain rights. And when it came to identifying what these natural rights were, there was a whole lot of range in those responses as well. Two men of great wisdom kind of caught my eye when I was reading through some of them. One of them was Mr. Michael Wang. He was very straightforward. He said, if you want to cite the most fundamental rights, the three that came to mind for him were to vote, to own property, and to press charges and collect damages. These are all pretty clear and basic and fundamental, and I don't find myself in disagreement with any of them. There were other viewpoints that were equally interesting. Another man of great wisdom, Elias Fenwick, made note that he thinks most living things have three basic desires: the desire to live, the desire to be happy, and the desire to reproduce. Take that as we will, it's interesting to compare the views of Elias and Michael with the views of a couple of guys named Locke and Jefferson. When Locke was talking about natural rights, he phrased them as being, most commonly cited, he phrased them as being life, liberty, and property. I hear a lot of that in what Mr. Wang has to say. When Mr. Jefferson applied quill to parchment and was writing the lion's share of the Declaration of Independence, he made mention of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which rings bells consistent with that of Mr. Fenwick's observations. It's very interesting to see how a young mind of the 21st century can make such similar observations to minds of the 18th century. That being so, you've got to remember where these Enlightenment thoughts and these philosophies are going in the real world, politically, diplomatically, economically. So let's push forward to when it hits the fan, if we can put it that way. By the 1770s, you guys all know the American colonies of the British here in North America, specifically ranging from New Hampshire in the north to Georgia in the south, had come to a point where they were ready to go into armed, violent conflict. They needed justifiable cause, and many of them truly believed they had it. This is reflected in the Declaration of Independence, which was signed in July of 1776. I want you to look at that declaration and read it from beginning to end. And look at the rationale in the document. Look at the criticisms made of the king and of the parliament. And then consider that this revolution has such a huge impact in other parts of the world. In the short term, certainly in France, and in many ways, ironically. The Americans couldn't have won this revolution without French support, which was given largely at the behest of King Louis XVI, who most would define as an absolute monarch, the kind of leader that the Declaration of Independence was raising objection to. And with the assistance of France under the leadership of Louis XVI, the United States acquired its independence. It wasn't long after that, in the 1780s, that another revolution, largely inspired by what happened in the United States, occurs in France. And it doesn't end well for Louis XVI. Like the American Revolution, that French Revolution needs justification and rationale, and it isn't hard to find it. I want you to look into something called the Declarations of the Rights of Man and Citizen. And this was adopted in France in 1789 at a very, very crucial point at the onset of the French Revolution. But I want you to look at what the Declaration of Rights of Man says and then compare it to what you see in the American Declaration of Independence. Note the similarities and any differences that are there. And also keep this in mind. This is Enlightenment thinking at work. I will see you guys in our next session. Have a great day.